To start our list right, at number 10, we have the Queen of Spades. Basically the Russian version of Bloody Mary, this supernatural being is said to grant wishes to anyone who summons her, but at a price of course. As the Joker once said, if you're good at something, never do it for free. To summon her, similar to Bloody Mary, you need to go into a dark room with a mirror and light a candle in front of it. Once you have that set up, you need to place a Queen of Hearts playing card right against the mirror. Then, taking lipstick, you need to draw a door with some stairs on the mirror. Now in front of the mirror, you need to clear your mind and close your eyes and say, Queen of Spades, come, 3 times. While you're saying her name, visualize the Queen of Spades opening the door and walking the stairs from the lipstick drawing. This part is where many report hearing evil laughter just before they encounter the Queen of Spades. Once she appears to you, you need to hold your candle and say your wish out loud. Once you're done, blow out your candle. If not, her spirit may come out of the mirror and stay in our world. Coming in at number 9, we have the Black Curtains. This Russian story started off as a simple request from a mother to her daughter, asking her to go to the store to purchase some curtains for the home. She urged the daughter to not buy any black curtains under any circumstances. However, when the girl got to the shop, she saw that there are only black curtains. So despite her mother's wishes, she decided to get them rather than go home empty-handed. When she arrived home, her mom was upset. But since they had no curtains, she put them up anyway. And this is where things get worse. During that night, the girl's father was strangled. And the night after, the same would happen to her mother and her brother. The traumatized girl rushed to the police, and it was decided that they would set up cameras and microphones all over the home to investigate the murders. They ordered the girl to go to bed as normal, but as time went by, the black curtain appeared to stretch and move, reaching for the girl in her bed. The police immediately opened fire and the curtain began to bleed out and let out a demonic screech as it fell to the ground. Stealing our number 8 spot, we have the Old Lady of Ostankino. This is a 5-century-old story of a lady living in the district of Ostankino, Moscow. The strange thing is that this lady only appears to Russian leaders, not other citizens. It is said that she appears to Russian leaders to warn them of upcoming dangers such as attacks, sicknesses, plagues, you name it. In return, this old lady only asked them to never farm on the land that she appeared on, in Ostankino. Despite getting useful advice, a powerful ruler of Ostankino disobeyed these orders and ordered men to start digging in the land. The lady was angry and summoned all the spirits of the land, and it was said that they possessed the residents of the city and led them all to their dooms. But at number 7, we have Anatoly Moskvin, the corpse collector. This is definitely a case where life is stranger than fiction. Legend has it that a mysterious person roams Russia, waiting for people to kidnap. He then kills them, preserves them, then puts their mummified bodies on display. It's a horror story fit for nightmares. This mysterious person was later found and arrested, going by the name of Anatoly Moskvin. He was reported to have killed 29 women, would mummify them, and would turn them into large dolls. His parents even thought they were large regular dolls. Anatoly was no stranger to the cemetery and had visited with his friends on multiple occasions. Here is where they said he discovered his sinister hobby. He even claimed that he was empathetic to the corpses as his sole purpose was to bring them back alive. Securing our number 6 spot, we have the Domovoi. The Domovoi is a house spirit in Slavic folklore. It is a masculine, typically small, bearded, and sometimes covered in hair all over. According to some traditions, the Domovoi takes on the appearance of current or former owners of the house, but has a gray beard, sometimes with tails or little horns. It is the protector of the house, and every home is said to have its own Domovoi. The Domovoi protected not only the human inhabitants of the house, but their herds and household animals as well. In some areas, Slavs believed that prosperity and well-being could not exist in a new home until the head of the family died and became its guardian spirit. Right in the hump of our list, we have the infamous Baba Yaga. This is a Slavic folklore that is commonly told around Russia. The Baba Yaga is a supernatural entity or witch that takes the form of an elderly lady. She is said to be the refugee of the dead, meaning this is the form she had taken after coming back from the afterlife. Appearing as weak and fragile, this would be a good way for the Baba Yaga to disguise what her true sinister intentions were. She is described as having bright red eyes and sharp metal or stone teeth. Her house is reported by witnesses to be a dark house deep in the woods that is standing on 2 chicken legs. Her house is said to be moved around by Baba Yaga's power to travel to different locations to find more victims. When people encounter the Baba Yaga, she is said to be helpful on some occasions, but most of the time, she would be dangerous and bloodthirsty. For example, in one story, she would do something heroic like locating a missing bride, but in another story, she is a child-eating monster who can't stop. A famous disaster takes our number 4 spot, the Chernobyl Blackbird. Just a few days before the infamous Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster, many workers at the plant reported seeing a large, dark, and mutated man with gigantic wings. This humanoid creature was given the name Black Bird of Chernobyl, and despite the fact it had no head, it had piercing red eyes that would send chills to the spines of anyone caught looking. Before the nuclear disaster, workers claimed to have been plagued by terrifying dreams and many instances of bad luck. Fast forward to the day of the disaster, and now workers have reported seeing a large black bird-like creature with a 40-foot wingspan flying through the smoke of Chernobyl. Many people believe these creatures to be a bad omen, since they are shown around history to appear before tragic events. You should definitely know this one, but at number 3 we have the Russian sleep experiment. This experiment was conducted in the 1940s in a top-secret Soviet facility. The Soviets used 5 Gulag prisoners to test what no sleep did to their brains and body in 30 days. They promised freedom when, or rather, if they survived. They would use air stimulants to keep them awake for all of the days. In the course of 5 days, the situation went out of control. The subjects blocked observation and went all kinds of crazy with constant screaming and moaning. Then, on the 9th day, a prisoner was screaming so loud that he completely tore his vocal cords right off. Then, on day 14, they tried to evoke a reaction by telling the prisoners they would open the chamber, but they would get a voice back saying, "We don't want to be freed." Then on day 15, after another day of silence, they decided to open the chamber, where they saw the unspeakable. When they opened it, they immediately noticed one of the prisoners was dead due to mutilation. As the soldiers were taking out the other prisoners out, they noticed chunks of human meat all over the room. The other 4 had muscles and skin torn off from their bodies, which all seemed to be self-inflicted. Their abdominal organs had also been removed. As soldiers were trying to get them out, they began begging to stay inside the chamber with the gas on. But due to this traumatizing sight, the witnessing soldiers would follow a similar fate, with many dying and others reported ripping off their own reproductive organs. Beethoven would be shocked at our number 2 spot, but we have the red piano. This story begins when these parents bought a red piano for their daughter, who had all kinds of desire to finally play on one. Once she had started playing, she couldn't stop. Just like a young Beethoven, after hours of playing, her fingers would begin to hurt. Her parents relieved her by telling her that it was normal and that's just part of the learning process. When she went back to play the piano a few days later, she found that the piano was broken. The parents asked the lady to fix it, but oddly, she asked everyone to exit the room to ensure that there were no distractions. After it was fixed, the girl played once again, but would fall ill after a while of playing on it. Then, the piano broke again, with the pair having to call the same lady to fix. Due to the curiosity of how she fixed it, the parents decided to peep through the keyhole of the room to see what she was doing. The lady was found opening the piano, pulling out a jar of blood and drinking it. When the police inspected the piano, it was discovered that the piano had tiny needles on the keys, so every time the daughter played, she was really getting drained of her own blood. Taking our number 1 spot of our list, we have the Chapayoskos. Once there was a couple, Elena and Alexei, who worked at a chemical plant. Their love for each other was very strong. However, one day before their wedding, an accident occurred. Alexei was at the chemical plant when a chemical fire bursted out of nowhere, eventually making the whole plant explode. Unfortunately for her, it was too late to escape, and he passed away in the fire along with one other co-worker. Upon hearing the devastating news, Elena, with no intentions to live anymore, threw herself in front of a train. Eyewitnesses said that she wore a white gown before jumping on the track, which was the same outfit that her grandmother gave her for the wedding. She was later buried in the municipal cemetery, and now people who decide to visit their loved ones at the cemetery report seeing Elena in her white gown strolling through the grounds. Apparently, her ghost is still looking for her loved one Alexei. At number 10, we have the Cursed Poem, or Tamino's Hell. Published by Japanese poet Seijo Yasu, it's said that one of his poems, named Tamino's Hell, is cursed and could kill or haunt people if read out loud. So just not to die, I'll be playing it safe and I'll just show you the poem rather than reading it. Yeah. In 1974, Japanese filmmaker Terayama Suji directed a movie based on Tamino's Hell. He ended up passing away in 1983. This is where people first believed the movie was cursed, since the poem was used and read in the movie. As time went by, people began forgetting about the incident, but then in 2004, one Japanese writer published a book based on the poem, saying, "If you by chance happen to read this poem out loud, after you will suffer from a terrible fate which cannot be escaped." It's said that even hearing someone say the poem out loud could lead your life into disaster or even death. So let's read it out loud. I'm just kidding, everyone relax. Nowadays this poem is feared internationally, but for those who remain skeptical, come on, give it a read. At number 9, we have Hitori Kakarembo, solo hide and seek. The name directly translates to one man hide and seek. And as for the name suggests, it's a game where one person plays hide and seek. The instructions are thorough, so bear with me. Here's what you need to play. A stuffed toy with arms and legs, a red thread and a needle, rice, nail clippers, a box cutter, and a cup of salt water. The process is kind of complicated, so bear with me. To start, make sure you're home alone. Cut open the toy and take out the stuffings, replacing with rice and fingernail clippings. Sew it back with some red thread. Give the toy a name and be sure it's not your own. Then go find yourself a hiding place like a closet and place your saltwater cup in there. After that, go to the bathroom and fill your tub with just enough water to submerge the doll. Now you just have to wait until 3 a.m. When the time hits, go to the bathroom, look at the toy, and say, "You're it." Count to 10 and then go back to the bathroom, pick up the toy, and say, "I found you," 3 times. Easy, right? As you're in the bathroom, stab the toy and put it back in the water. Tell the stuffed animal, "You'll be it." Now it's your turn to hide where you left a glass of salt water. At this point of the game is where things get a bit creepier. People report hearing voices, footsteps, and the TV may turn on and off. Wait a bit until it's complete silence again. Take a sip of the water and hold it in your mouth and bring the cup with you as you look around for the toy. At this point, the toy is no longer in the bathroom, so you need to search the whole house for it. Do not leave the house, do not turn off the lights, and keep everything locked, and be sure to finish the game under 2 hours or the spirit will become too powerful to stop. When you finally find the toy, spit the water out, pour the rest of the cup on the animal, then say, "I won," 3 times. Finally, be sure to burn the toy within 1 to 2 days. I don't know what would compel someone to play hide and seek alone, but there are the instructions. Sealing our number 8 spot, we have Gasha Dokuru. The Gasha Dokuru, or giant starving skeleton, is a rageful, mythical Japanese yokai that is said to be 15 times the size of a normal human, which could be around 90 feet tall. Shaq? This entity is born where there's a large amount of human bodies, whether it be a mass grave or a battlefield. This is where these spirits become angry due to the fact that they can't get proper burials. This usually happens from events such as a war, a famine, or plagues. Then the bones of these angry spirits form together, creating this one large skeleton. Despite their large stature, they still manage to sneak up on humans. They crush them in their hands and bite off their head to drink their blood. This creature will definitely give Attack on Titans a run for their money. The scary thing is, they don't even need to kill people nor drink their blood. They simply just enjoy doing it. They usually roam around midnight using the darkness as their cover. The only way you would know one is near you is from the sounds of bones rattling or strange ringing. Since Japan has less wars and plagues, these creatures have not been spotted. But when it does, I wonder how much Gasha Dokuru will rise. Showing that even our bathroom stalls aren't safe, at number 7 we have Akamanto. Think twice before using certain bathrooms in Japan, as you might run into Akamanto. Akamanto is a spirit in Japan that is said to appear to people in bathroom stalls, usually the last stall of all stalls. And definitely be sure you have toilet paper in your stall, because that's how Akamanto gets his cue to enter. He's described as wearing a long red cloak with a mask to cover his face. He'll give you a choice between red and blue paper, and your answer will decide your fate. If you choose a red paper, he will cut your throat, causing all of your clothes to turn into a bright crimson color. However, the other option is not any better. If you choose the blue paper, he will strangle you, making your face turn blue. So you basically have 0 chance, because if you try to pick another color that he doesn't offer, he will kidnap you and bring you to his lair where it's unknown what he'll do to you. So is there any way to make it out alive? Well, the best way to answer Akamanto is to simply say, "I do not need paper," and he will leave you alone. Hey, I know you'll be stuck with no toilet paper, but at least you won't die. At least that's a good trade. The number 6 spot, we have Teke Teke. Teke Teke is a story of a woman named Kashima Raiku who lived in the city of Hokkaido, Japan. One night as she was waiting on the Meishin Expressway, a group of men decided to beat her up and leave her on the floor, barely conscious. With her little strength, Raiku would frantically call out for help, but since it was so late at the night, there was nobody around. After coming to the realization that no one was going to help, she began crawling her way back home. As she was crawling, she noticed that she was on a train track and got struck by an oncoming train. The train ended up severing her body in half. Legend says that she is still crawling with only half of her body, while making the sounds of teke teke. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Kisaragi station. In 2004, a 2chan user named Hasumi posted on a thread asking for help because she got on the wrong train at the Shin Hamamatsu station. This was rather strange because she usually caught the same train after work, and trains in this station only go in one direction. She started getting anxious because she remembered the stops only being a few minutes between each station. But on this train, they were much longer. They even went through a tunnel, but her usual line didn't go through any sort of tunnel. She walked to the front of the car to ask the conductor for help, but the curtain was closed and no one answered. She then knocked on the door, but that's when the train suddenly stopped at Kisaragi station. As she left the train, she was filled with anxiety and fear. But as she tried to go back, the train's door shut on her. She told the other users on the discussion board of the stations, but they had all said that there was no such station located in Japan. She decided to exit the station and walk back along the tracks, even back through the tunnel she had gone under before. She reported hearing strange sounds like drums in the distance and a voice telling her that walking on the tracks is dangerous. As she grew more afraid, she turned back to see an old man with one leg, which then slowly disappeared right after. When she finally got out of the tunnel, a man came up offering for help and to drive her to the nearest station. This is when she posted on the thread for the last time, saying that the man was muttering to himself, then her phone died. She was never heard on the thread again. Chilling at our number 4 spot, we have Peko-chan. Peko-chan is the mascot of the Milky Candies, but her story is more sour than sweet. The story goes that Peko-chan was actually based on a young girl who passed away during the 1940s. The legend goes that during World War II, there was a huge food shortage in Japan. Because of this, many people, including women and children, were starving to death. So Peko-chan's mother decided to cut a piece of her own arm off and offered it to Peko to eat. This is the moment Peko-chan discovered how tasty human flesh was. In fact, she had never tasted anything so good in her life. She couldn't resist with such a piece, so she decided to kill her mom and eat her whole body. Ever since, she's been constantly craving human meat, living the rest of her days as a cannibal. At our number 3 spot, we have the Kone Kone. The legend arose in Japan where sightings of a creature are reported in rice fields or in an open sea. This creature resembles a tall white mannequin made of fabric, almost like an inflatable tube, but deadlier. Other than that, no one knows exactly what it looks like because everyone who saw it either went crazy or has died. There's a story where one summer, 2 brothers went to visit their grandparents in the countryside. They were playing outside when they noticed a figure in the distance, wiggling in the wind. But when the wind stopped, the figure kept on wiggling. Curious, the older brother took binoculars to see the figure, but as he did, he stopped breathing and turned blue with sweat running down his whole body. The younger brother asked what he saw, and the older brother responded that it's better not to know. But the voice that came out was not the brother's. Later that day, the older brother was found laughing uncontrollably, wiggling in the fields. All the way at our number 2 spot, we have Honeona. In Japanese mythology, the Honeona, or the Bone Woman, is a spirit whose face, hands, and neck appear to be that of a young, attractive female. However, the rest of her body bears no flesh at all. It's said that she uses her beauty to seduce unsuspecting men, where she would lure them into the dark and isolated areas. Because when they're alone, she reveals her true form and sucks her life force energy, leaving them as a pile of dust. In other accounts, the Honeona are said to be the spirits of a young woman who had died, but cannot move on from their past lovers. To their loved ones, they appear normal, but for everyone else, they appear as the Bone Woman. Taking our number 1 spot in our list, we have the Okiku doll. Let me start this off by saying that this haunted doll is worse than Chucky. This story starts in 1918 Japan. Older brother Aikaichi Suzuki bought a doll for his 2-year-old sister Okiku. The doll had a black bob cut and a traditional kimono. His sister loved the doll so much that she even named it after her own name. These two would become attached together like no other. But in the following year, Okiku became gravely ill and ended up passing away. To commemorate her, her family put up her favorite doll on her memorial shrine. Everything seemed fine until after a few days, they would begin to notice something very strange. The doll's hair seemed to be actively growing. Let's start our list right. At number 10, we have the Codex Gigas. The Codex Gigas, more commonly known as the Devil's Bible, is a 3-foot tall medieval manuscript with origins being completely unknown to historians. The story goes that a monk got sentenced to solitary confinement for breaking his religious vows. To avoid the punishment, he claimed that he was going to write a book filled with all of the knowledge in the world. After hours of writing, he found that this was an impossible task and decided to pray to God for divine intervention, hoping to receive all of the knowledge in the world. However, God didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Satan. Cause like, why not? Instead of the holiest person in the world, let's just pick the worst guy. And it's said that Satan assisted him in writing this book. What's surprising is that Satan is believed to have written this book in a day, and based on modern research, the book showed no signs of hesitation or fatigue. A picture of the devil is also at the front, just in case you thought I was lying. Stealing our number 9 spot, we have Athenodorus. Around 50 BC, Roman writer and politician Pliny the Younger tells a story about a chained up ghost. There is a house in Athens, Greece that has a rather unfortunate past. Former residents would often report hearing sounds of metal chains, and as the sounds drew as close as they could, a ghost of an old man with a skinny appearance would appear with chains bound to his hands and his feet. After its abandonment, it would be put up for sale and bought by a philosopher named Athenodorus. Despite hearing about the horrific past, he did what anyone with a death wish would do. He bought the house. On the first night, he began to hear noises of metal clanking, similar to that of the metal chains. He tried his best to ignore, but the sound just grew louder and louder. And he began to see the exact apparition that was described to him previously. The ghost gestured to follow it and led the philosopher to a specific location in the courtyard of the house. The ghost stops and Athenodorus realizes that the ghost is suddenly trying to communicate something. The ghost then vanishes. So Athenodorus marks the spot and orders some men to dig up the area, which revealed a pile of bones with metal chains attached. He ordered a proper burial and the ghost never appeared again. Haunting the number 8 spot, we have the ghost tablet. A tablet made in Babylon around 1500 BC is supposedly the earliest known representation of a ghost. The clay tablet shows a handcuffed bearded spirit getting guided into the afterlife by a potential lover or a friend. It was originally hard to see any form of drawing on the tablet until researchers put it under a lamp which clearly illustrated the ghostly depiction. At our number 7 spot, we have Petronius' werewolf. Roman author Petronius wrote one of the earliest werewolf stories in history. The story goes that one day a man named Niceros was planning to do a nighttime trip to his girlfriend. The full moon was in full effect that night, and as he set off, a Roman soldier decided to ask if he could accompany him during the trip. Niceros would agree. However, as they kept walking, they would reach a point where the soldier needed to take a bathroom break. He would do so on a tombstone, all while taking his clothes off and putting them in a pile. Confused by his actions, Niceros began to keep a close eye on the soldier. Then, all of a sudden, the soldier shapeshifted into a wolf, disappearing into the woods. Niceros was stunned, but ended up investigating the soldier's clothes, and to his surprise, they had all turned to hard stone. This one is a little bit brutal, but a Viking blood eagle takes our number 6 spot. Vikings are known for their skill as warriors, but they're also remembered for their creative, brutal execution methods. The method, however, was so brutal that many historians believed it to be a myth or perhaps a way to strike fear into their enemies. The unlucky man will be laid face down and tied up, and then an axe or a sword was used to cut sections of the back from the spine. The spine would be pulled out accordingly to reveal a set of quote-unquote wings. The term blood eagle refers to the part when the victim's lungs would be stretched onto the wings, all while the victim was breathing, giving the effect of fluttering wings. Right in the hunt for a list, we have Telepolemus. The story is of a man named Thrasyllus who murders his best friend Telepolemus while they're on a hunting trip together because he fell in love with Telemopolis' wife. The spirit of Telemopolis would then appear in his wife's dreams, telling her that he was murdered by Thrasyllus, asking to be avenged. And guess what happened immediately after the murder? Thrasyllus, being the type of guy he is, asked if he could court his wife, but ended up getting hard decline due to her grieving process. This is when Telepolemus' wife sees the opportunity to avenge her husband. She decides to invite him over, and while he's over, she offers him wine laced with drugs, eventually making him unconscious. This is where it kind of gets gory, so kids, just close your eyes. Knowing that death is too easy of a punishment, she decides to blind him using her hairpins. Down at number 4, we have the human swine of Empress Lu. During the Tang Dynasty, otherwise known as China's Golden Age, Liu Bang, the first emperor, was about to run into a huge problem. His wife, Empress Lu, was a confident person, with many people finding her admirable, including those in office. Unfortunately, Liu Bang was already having an affair with a another woman named Lady Qi. Originally, the son of Empress Lu would become the next emperor. However, due to his love for another woman, he wanted Lady Qi to birth the next emperor. Empress Lu became enraged with full intention to get back at this cheating emperor. Despite the emperor's plan to change his heir, Empress Lu's son would become the next emperor. Ready to get revenge on her husband and fearful of being overthrown, Empress Lu decided to poison the son of Lady Qi, and if that wasn't enough, Empress Lu would proceed to cut off Lady Qi's hands and her feet, causing her to pass away slowly. At our number 3 spot, we have the odd Bagon Pipes. Located in Tibet, this is said to be a construction site of an alien civilization 1500 years ago. Paranormal enthusiasts call this area an out-of-place artifact, meaning that the context of its location is unusual. The Bagon Pipes are actually embedded into the mountain itself, and it's actually impossible to do this with even modern technology. On top of the mountain, it's a pyramid-shaped outcropping, and if you enter the salt caves below, you would find the Bagon Pipes also embedded in the caves as well as in the mountains. This one could be the death of all of us, but at number 2 we have the nine-tailed fox. Legend says that the nine-tailed fox would often appear throughout different points of ancient history in the form of various women, but after a long hiatus, it would reappear for the final time in Japan by the name of Tamamomo no Mei. This disguised woman would be the most favored courtesan of Emperor Toba. The nine-tailed fox would disguise as a very beautiful and intelligent woman, but would also be a master hypnotist and a manipulator. Her doom came after her intentions to take over Japan and kill the emperor. She would instead be defeated, and her spirit was said to be trapped in a boulder called Seshuoseki, or the Killing Stone. Taking our number 1 spot, we have the Black Sarcophagus. Archaeologists dug up an ancient black sarcophagus in Alexandria, Egypt, dating around 300 BC. Upon discovery, they had become very wary of the possibility that the sarcophagus could be cursed. Instead, inside were the remains of 3 skeletons, ancient etched drawings, and ancient sewage water, making this a perfect gift basket for the devil. There are many drawings of poisonous and venomous creatures all around the sarcophagus, making many to believe that these are warning signs to just keep away. And guess what they did? Scientists went through every single bone, but had to stop multiple times due to the terrible odor.
Starting off this countdown at number 10, the Singapore Stone. Did you know that Singapore has its very own Hercules? Known as Badang, a poor fisherman lived his humble life by the Singapore River. When he realized a water djinn had been stealing his fishes, he set a trap to catch the spirit red-handed. He then confronted the captured spirit, who promised to grant his wish in return for its release. Badang proceeded to wish for superhuman strength, and was soon appointed court warrior by the Sultan of Singapore. Warriors from far and wide started swarming in to challenge the strong man, including India's Wadi Bajaya. The two dueled in a series of contests, and the last one saw them lifting a massive rock and throwing it towards the Singapore River. The rock was discovered years later at the spot where it was said to have landed, and not just that, there was an inscription on it, probably to commemorate Badang's achievement. However, only a fragment of the rock survives today, and as it's been said, the Brits blasted it to pieces in 1843. While it's housed in the temporary closed National Museum of Singapore, you can still see it online.
Barely a meter wide, the Singapore Stone is a fragment of a large sandstone slab that once stood at the mouth of the Singapore River. Blown up in 1843 to widen the passageway of the river mouth, this fragment is believed to be over 1,000 years old.
Number 9, Red Hill. Red Hill has a bloody tale behind its name. As strange as it sounds, it all started with a swordfish infestation, where the sea creatures attacked unsuspected villagers and fishermen by the shore. An idea came out of using a banana tree trunks as a barricade to trap the swordfishes. He brought this up to the Sultan, who granted permission to proceed. The brilliant plan worked, earning him the respect and admiration of the villagers, but not the Sultan, who soon became envious of the attention. Out of jealousy, he ordered his men to rid the boy, even taking his life by any means necessary. And so they did. The poor boy's blood flowed down the hill where he lived, staining it blood red, and so that's how it's said it's got its name. Number 8, Kusu Island. An island with an interesting backstory is Kusu Island, also known as a sacred site. The island is home to a Chinese temple and 3 Malay shrines. But do you know where it gets its name from? Kusu means turtle in Hokkien, and legend has it that a giant turtle transformed into the island to save stranded sailors and fishermen, victims of the stormy weather. The sailors and fishermen returned the following year and the year after with offerings to show their gratitude. From then on, people head down on the 9th month of the lunar calendar to pay their respects. Number 7, Radha Ma. Radin Ma is the name of the area between Teluk Bangla, Bukit Permi, and Jalan Bukit Merah. Sorry if I mispronounced any of that. As well as a couple of known landmarks around the city. It's also the name of a Javanese princess, Radin Ma Ayu. Her father was a warrior prince, her mother was a commoner, and their marriage was condemned by the Sultan. One day, while the warrior prince was away on an expedition, the Sultan ordered his men to burn their house down, killing his wife. Radin, however, was saved by a loyal servant. Upon his return, the devastated warrior prince left the Javanese kingdom for Temasek with his baby daughter. Soon after their arrival, the Sultan of Temasek arranged for the warrior prince to marry his daughter, similar to the tale of Cinderella. Radin's new stepmother wasn't a big fan of hers. The plot thickens when the adult Radin was to marry her stepmother's nephew, whom she refused. Not liking her decision, he attacked her main man in life, her father. In an attempt to save him, Radin was hurt in the process, receiving a stab in the heart. It's said that her body is laid to rest at the foot of Mount Faber, where there's a shrine in respect of her loyalty. Number 6, Island of Death. Plamati, or Island of Death, was a former name of Sentosa. While no one knows exactly just how the island got its morbid name, it's been said that the island was once a place of piracy and bloodshed. Other reasons behind its name include the location of the island, which was adjacent to Pulau Brani, which was the burial ground for many ancient Malay warriors. Then there's a tale about a deadly outbreak called the Blakang Mati fever in the late 1840s, which almost wiped out the original Bugis settlers on the island. In 1972, Pulau Mati was renamed as Sentosa, or Peace and Tranquility, leaving its past behind. Today, it's a beach resort known as the State of Fun. Halfway number 5 is Singapura. Sang Nila Utama, or Sri Tribhuwana, was once the ruler of the Shivajaya Empire at Sumatra. According to legends, he went on an expedition in the late 13th century and discovered an island with a white sandy shore. After learning that the place was called Temasek, Sang decided to cross the waters to reach this newly discovered land. However, a storm appeared out of nowhere and nearly swallowed the boat. In a desperate attempt, Sang threw his crown into the turbulent waters. The weather and the sea immediately became calm, and the crew reached Teluk Blangah safely. As they landed, a strange beast was spotted from afar. Upon hearing that it was a lion, Sang was overjoyed and decided to name the island Sigapura, or Lion City. The discovery was said to have happened in and around AD 1297, and Sang went on to rule for 48 years before his passing. His palace and burial ground was located on top of Bukit Larangang, or Forbidden Hill. Number 4, Sisters Islands. Lying south of Sentosa, Sisters Islands refer to Pulau Sabar Darta and Pulau Sabar Lut. Many years ago, there was a pair of sisters, Mina and Lena, living by the southern coast of Singapore. Being very attached to each other, the sisters vowed to marry 2 brothers so that they could live together always. However, one night, Lena ran into a group of pirates by the sea. Stunned by her beauty, the pirate chief was determined to marry Lena. When the dawn broke, the pirates came and abducted Lena to their ships. Weeping over the loss of her dear sister, Mina came swimming after the boats. The stormy waters were merciless, and she was doomed eventually. In a desperate attempt, Lena broke free and dived into the sea. The next day, a pair of islands appeared where the sisters had drowned. They were named Sisters Islands by the villagers in memory of the 2 girls.
And legend has it that the next day, after the storm had subsided, Sisters Islands had appeared in the position where the 2 sisters were last seen.
Number 3, Underwater City. Legend has it that Sang Nila Utama was the child between an adventurer king and a princess of an underwater kingdom, like we talked about before. Supposedly, Sang's father Raja had a glass case created for him to descend into the sea because he was curious about what lies beneath the calm waters. He sank into a country called Dika and was greeted by a race of men, and was later taken to meet the ruler of this underwater wonderland. And that's exactly how he met Sang's mum, Princess Mathabu Labari. This world under the sea, however, is scarcely ever mentioned in history books. Number 2, the Merlion. One night, the villagers living by the southern coast of Tesamek were awakened by the howling winds and crashing waves. The dark clouds blocked out the lights of the moon and the stars, turning the world in complete darkness. It was as though the island of Tesamek would be sunk by the raging sea. The terrified villagers got down on their knees and prayed. During this moment, a bright light was observed emerging from the southern waters. A massive creature, half lion, half fish, roared in anger. The battle between the fierce mythical animal and nature was intense, as the sky was filled with flashing lightning. The villagers had never witnessed such terrifying phenomenons before. After some time, the winds began to die down. The waves subsided and the sky started to clear. The gigantic sea beast had won the battle against nature. As it claimed its victory, it stood proudly on Sentosa. By morning, the Merlion had retreated into its waters, leaving behind a bright, colorful trail. Number 1, ghostly passengers. This story originates with taxi drivers, specifically ones who have had the eerie experience of picking up late-night passengers who ask to be dropped off at a cemetery. Usually, the protagonist in the story is a beautiful young woman waiting on a remote road for a taxi. Once she's in the taxi, she doesn't speak again and wordlessly hands the driver money when she arrives at her destination. In the morning, when the driver looks at the money, it's hell notes. money burnt as an offering have replaced the Singaporean bills.
At a number 10 spot, we have almost had a war over a tree. Two US Army officers named Captain Arthur Boniface and First Lieutenant Mark Barrett were axed and butchered until they passed from North Koreans while trying to trim a tree in the DMZ. This would later be known as the Korean axe murder incident. The tree was blocking a checkpoint view, which is why the US decided to chop it in the first place. As you would expect, when the US caught wind that the soldiers passed away in a foreign country, they quickly took action. They created Operation Paul Bunyan, which is named after a mythical lumberjack from North American lore. The operation was very simple. Go to the DMZ and chop it down, except they came with a little few friends of their own. This included hundreds of soldiers armed with machine guns, grenade launchers, and chainsaws. And if that wasn't enough to make this more American, they brought in a 23 vehicle convoy with a tank, 20 utility helicopters, and 7 attack helicopters. Oh, you thought I was done? They also brought in B-52s, F-4s, F-5s, F-111s, and also a carrier which was offshore and a nuclear-capable bomber circulating the area. If you guess that the North Koreans didn't do anything, you are right. At number 9 spot, we have videos of nuclear destruction. Okay, first things first, North Korea has no internet. Well, except for high-level officials and some schools, but that's pretty much it. This means their media spreads like a wildfire in a desert. The only thing that did catch fire is when North Korean featured a video simulation of a nuclear missile striking with what appears to be somewhere in the United States, as you can see the flag burning by the end of the video. This video was unveiled during a military parade marking the 105th birthday of Kim Il-sung. This video caused a lot of controversies, especially when it came at a time when the tensions were super high between the US and the Hermit State. For reference, this was in 2017, and by that time North Korea had done a ton of missile testing, and to make things more worrisome, North Korea test launched a suspected intercontinental ballistic missile into the sea this year. At number 8 spot, we have a betrayal at the death camps. North Korea is known for their cruel punishment and their horrendous living conditions. Put these two together and you have some of the worst death camps in the world. Just to give you a little bit of what happens on the inside, many of the prisoners were kept to the brink of starvation. They are forced to do physical demanding labor for hours, torture, subject to chemical experimentation, and sometimes prisoners would be randomly executed, sometimes because the guard didn't like them. One specific story from the Mirror has Shin Dong-hyuk share his experiences in these death camps. When he was 13 years old, he overheard his mother planning to escape the camp. Since he was practically born on the camp, all he knew was to obey and report anything bad in the eyes of North Korea. So he ratted his mom out. He would then recall watching his mom and his brother being dragged out and publicly executed in front of his very eyes. The worst part about this is that at the time he believed he did good because he claimed this is the type of brainwashing he underwent at the camp. At number 7 spot, we have Otter Warm Beer. Warm Beer was a student from UCLA and decided it was time to go somewhere outside of the box. He then went on a trip to North Korea through a Chinese company called Young Pioneer Tours, which is still one of the biggest tours to this day. In the hotel he was staying at, there was a forbidden floor, but he went there anyway and stole a political poster off the wall. This was all caught on film. This is all because a church in Hawaii that he was a part of wanted him to do it. During his confession speech on February 2016, he said this:
I have been very impressed by the Korean government's humanitarian treatment of severe criminals like myself, and of their very fair and square legal procedures in the DPR Korea.
This is a load of barnacles.
Then on March that same year, he was convicted and sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. Negotiations happened, but it wasn't until June 2017 when North Korea released Otto. Except he was in a coma after taking a sleeping pill. It wasn't until he was flown out to the US where he passed away. After this incident, the US government decided to ban all American tourists from visiting North Korea altogether. Another reason not to visit this place. At number 6 spot, we have North Korean ghost ships. Hundreds of abandoned boats from North Korea wash up on Japanese and Russian coastlines each year. Some of the vessels contain the crew's remains, but they're usually just a pile of bones. These ghost ships are thought to be the result of North Korean fishermen becoming lost at sea and dying from malnutrition or weather exposure. The ships are typically old and lack stronger engines, and I mean, it's from North Korea. They're pretty much still living in the 1980s still. However, after an investigation was done, they found that these boats are actually sent out from China as a way for them to fish illegally in North Korean waters, which violates UN sanctions completely. Right in the hump of our list, we have Ryugyong Hotel. Sorry if I mispronounced that. This 105-star hotel in Pyongyang was completed in 1992, but by that time, it didn't function as a hotel at all. The building was hollowless and had no windows, which meant complete darkness on on the inside. Kim Jong-un wanted this hotel to be the biggest and best hotel in the world, but it completely fell short from that goal. It still remains empty to this day. It's literally just a large structure just overlooking the city, and it's more scary to think that no one actually goes into that building. And in fact, this is the world's tallest unoccupied building. Now many theorists have claimed this building isn't empty and it harbors something more sinister inside. This may be a stretch, but online communities have mentioned that SCPs and other governmental projects are being kept secret in this building, hence why it will never truly open up to the public. At number 4 spot, we have Room 39. Room 39 is a secretive North Korean organization that figures out ways to get funds for Kim Jong-un. This room is in a ruling workers' party building in Pyongyang. The main goal of this room is basically to make sure that Kim and his family never run out of funds, and most of these ways are through illegal means. Legally, they invest in many different precious metals and currencies and some companies, but illegally, which is where they make most of their money, they allegedly make their money through means of narcotics, human trafficking, and most famous, counterfeiting money. The North Koreans are so good at creating counterfeit US dollars that they created a super note, which is supposedly 1-for-1 of a US $100 bill. Some people in the US have actually been prosecuted for distributing the money that was produced in this very room. This room also serves as a place for arms dealing, where they usually sell to terrorist organizations and dictators for money. At our number 3 spot, we have Kim Jong-il's tomb. His tomb is on this list because it just gives everyone other than North Koreans the utter creeps. The mausoleum contains the embalmed body of North Korea's late leader Kim Jong-il, and it was open to tourists for some time. During that time, you could see the leader in this glass box with his body resting inside. Just a creepy sight to see in general, let alone a dictator who causes people to suffer. At number 2 spot, we have the Shincheon massacre. Now before I get started with this one is all up for speculation. North Korea has said this happened while the US has said it was falsified, but forget about what we care about, let's just care about the North Korean side right now. They claim that a mass murder took place in the 1950s during the Korean War. In the town of Shincheon, American soldiers supposedly took the lives of over 35,000 civilians in the course of 52 days. If this was true, this would make it one of the most deadliest massacres in history, but that's if. Now this event is memorialized in the Shincheon Museum of American War Atrocities. Yup, there's a museum on horrible violent acts, and some of the paintings in here are pretty disturbing. At our number 1 spot, we have an election. This one is probably the least scariest on this list, but the fact that people have no right to vote for their leaders is definitely terrifying for me at least. Voting in North Korea is actually a thing. When you're supposed to go in for voting, many people show up super early to show a sign of loyalty. But when they're there to vote, it's just mandatory to vote for the SPA party, otherwise known as the Supreme People's Assembly. There's also supposedly private voting booths, but seriously, what do you have to hide? If you do attempt to vote for someone else, the police will follow you and find any ways to incriminate you or declare you insane.